In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, we are going to find out who is rising and who is falling. This is part one of a two-part series. And in this episode, Leif Thulin is going to share his thoughts on several prospects he believes that their draft stock is on the rise based off of their performance from this weekend. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Shout out to each and every person that has tuned in with us in 2025 and was rocking with us all 2024. I believe this year is going to be bigger and better. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are around the corner. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed, win or lose. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Also, be sure to check out the Locked On newsletter, your favorite Locked On NBA podcast. As a newsletter, you can check it out at lockedondaily.com. It will be delivered right to your inbox. So whatever team you support, again, Locked On newsletter delivered right to your inbox. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode. And this weekend, or this past weekend, was a very interesting and good weekend of college basketball. I went to two games. I'm just getting back in town a few hours ago. I went to see Oregon and Illinois on Thursday, I believe. My days were mixed up. And then yesterday, which was Sunday, I saw Oregon and Maryland. I had a chance to see Derek Queen. James, my brother, was at SMU, and Duke at SMU. We talked about that in an episode yesterday. There are quite a few games, some blowouts, some prospects that had some really strong performances. And there were also some high caliber prospects that really struggled over the weekend. And I wanted to bring Leif on. I know Leif watches more college basketball than anyone else. And before we get into the players that you thought helped themselves this weekend, what were your initial thoughts of the games? Is like I don't want to say the opening, but for the most part, most of the schools, it was like their first big conference games. The SEC is a gauntlet. What are your overall thoughts on some of the games this weekend?
Yeah, the SEC opened up with 3 undefeateds. 2 of them went down. So that was like kind of the big headline. And then you saw Florida and Kentucky do battle. Florida was one of those teams that went down. 106-100 was the opener to the day. And you're like, wow, that's going to be awesome. And then the rest of the games kind of went exactly as anticipated. Alabama blew out Oklahoma, who was previously undefeated, took care of home court. Tennessee remained undefeated by blasting Arkansas. And I think what you're going to see is home court's going to be even more advantageous and important to college basketball than ever before because of the depth of the SEC. And then if you look at some of those games, like you were at the Oregon and Illinois game, and that's a huge win. One, it was massive, a 32-point win by Yakachonis in Illinois, but it also takes a home win away from Oregon and puts them behind the 8 ball with already 2 home losses. And so I think Illinois has moved themselves into the front-running spot in the Big Ten, even behind a freshman-led team. And so it's a really interesting weekend in college basketball. And I think the games that teams win on the road this year are going to become even more pivotal than ever before.
You know what I was thinking? First of all, West Coast time is absolutely brutal for someone who lives in the Central Time Zone. The Florida-Kentucky game was like at 9 o'clock in the morning.
For you.
Yeah, was it 8? It was either 8 or 9.
It was 9 a.m. for me, so it was 8 a.m. for you over there.
8 a.m. So I was like, turned on. I'm already trying to get adjusted. Turn on the TV, and I'm like, they're tipping off already. So that was pretty brutal. But I mean, what a way to start the day. But let's get into some of your favorite prospects. Which prospect in your eyes had a big stock rising performance this weekend?
I think Ian Jackson's the one that has been trending up the most steadily for the past 2 weeks, and this weekend he only solidified it with another 20-point performance. That's 4 straight for him, and it's
Yep.
not all about scoring, but like his job for North Carolina is not really anything to do with a complete game playing defense. Like North Carolina is abysmal defensively because they don't have a 5-man. So what they're trying to do is outscore teams. He's been inserted in the starting lineup, scored 24 against UCLA a couple weeks ago, who's one of the best defenses in the country. Then he scored 26 against Campbell. Okay, like you can toss that aside. But then this week, 23 points against Louisville in a loss, and then 27 points in a 1-point win against Notre Dame. And the efficiency is pretty good, but what moves me is the way he's able to create in isolation against compact defenses, because college spacing is not great. North Carolina does have a lot of guards, but a couple of their players can't shoot very well, namely Elliot Cadeau and then whoever they play at the 5, whether it's Van Allen Lubin or Jalen Washington.
Well,
So
RJ Davis hasn't been able to shoot the ball well this year. He's still a threat, but statistically, he's
yeah,
not.
exactly. And so he's still a threat. And Drake Powell, for when he's in, teams are like, oh, we'll live with him shooting. Like he'll
Yeah.
make a few, but you'll live. So the fact he's able to create efficient offense from isolation has been really, really impressive. I actually was critical of Ian when I watched him play in high school. I watched him play a game against Montverde, and I was like, I mean, I don't know if I see it, because like these guys are the best of the best, and he doesn't look like them. Like he doesn't look like them, and they schemed him, and they were a better team, and they were able to overwhelm him. Well, Ian Jackson's been able to score efficiently, shoot efficiently, and he can create on all 3 levels. I don't know exactly his true fit, but it's undeniable that his stock's rising from where it was previously. And I think I was too low to begin the year. So for me, I think he's a riser, and I wouldn't be surprised if he finds his way into the lottery, though I don't know if his fit's all that clear.
I have him in the lottery, and the perfect team for me right now for him to go to is Golden State. He could be that Jordan Poole type instant offense guy off the bench where he doesn't necessarily need to set guys up. I mean, it's a long shot that that marriage works, but I think that would be like the ideal fit for him right now. There are concerns about his passing. He only has 10 assists total this season. But I want to give a shout out to Leif, to the listeners. It was the day before the UCLA game. Leif and I had this episode planned about North Carolina needs to unleash Ian Jackson, and I had computer issues. Like my computer completely crashed. It was like 1:00 in the morning, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it working. So I ended up writing an article, and then ended up getting the computer issue solved at like 3:00 in the morning. And Leaf had, rightfully so, went to bed by then. And so I had wrote an article that North Carolina needs to unleash Ian Jackson. It was supposed to be a podcast episode. And since then, he has been on the streak of 20 plus games. Prior to that, he had never played over 30 minutes. I don't understand why. And coming into the season, I had him, I want to say at the end of the first round. But my concern was, how is he going to fit in North Carolina's offense? We knew Cadeau was going to start. We knew RJ Davis was going to start. And we knew that they like Seth Trimble. So I didn't know if there was like a clear-cut path for him or Drake Powell to like have the opportunity to get loose. And Ian has pretty much forced Hubert Davis's hand, and he's made the most of it. I think he's a lottery pick. He's a scorer. He's efficient. Last I looked, 50% from the floor, 41% from 3 on a good volume of attempts. He gets to the foul line, and he's the only one that can right now consistently generate his own offense and be efficient for North Carolina. He needs to play, and their season is going to depend on how far Ian Jackson carries them.
Yeah, I think Ian Jackson's biggest test will be, as the ACC scouts what he likes to do, how well can he create for others when they show, hey, like Drake Powell's not that great of a shooter yet. We're going to stunt from him. Like, is he willing to give the ball up? Because that'll move scouts up further. Because, yeah, he's going to be quick. He's going to get to the rim. Yeah, he can hit mid-range jump shots. He's right now shooting 40% from 3. But as soon as teams scout and know where he likes to attack, I think there's going to be adjustments. And I'll be very curious to see if he falls into the trap of forcing shots against 2, or if when he gets 2 on the ball, he's able to make the adequate passes. And I think that'll move the needle, because right now, you could say, oh, like it's college basketball, like assists aren't the best reflection of passing. Well, he just doesn't pass. Like
Yeah.
the reason I'm saying he's moving up is because he's scoring and that's what he's asked to do. But I think when you get to the entirety of this season, much less go through ACC play and hopefully the NCAA tournament, there's going to be questions asked of you that need you to make the right decision as opposed to just being a gunner and scoring. And so I think that's the next step for him.
Yeah, speaking of guys who you can also categorize as a player that doesn't pass, we're going to talk about Ace Bailey next. Ace had a 39-point performance earlier in the week. James and I covered that. But we want to hear Leif's thoughts on Ace Bailey's performance. We're also going to talk about Carter Bryant and Koby Brea coming up. Before we get into the second segment, let's talk about Prize Picks because it is cold outside, but basketball season is heating up, and there is no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. Whether you are a diehard fan or just love friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. And here's how it works. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. 1,000 times your cash. So think LeBron is going to drop 30 points, or maybe Luka is going to get more than 8 assists. Prize Picks lets you pick your predictions and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. Right now is the absolute perfect time to join, because if you download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, you get $50 instantly when you place your first $5 lineup. That's right. No need to win to get in the bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, second segment. Ace Bailey, 39 points, 8 rebounds, 4 blocks. I think he was 16 of 29 from the floor. Struggled from the foul line. James and I, we touched on it on the episode. I want to say it was Friday. What are your overall thoughts about Ace and his performance, and why is he a riser in your opinion?
I mean, the thing about Ace that's so alluring is the shots he can make that no one else can make. And what I mean by that is you salivate over the fact that he can hit 16 to 29, and then you watch and you say, well, he just shot 30 shots and made the toughest ones that were in that. So if you tap into the potential and make and get him a little better at creating space, a little better at shot selection, all of a sudden you're seeing a guy who can score 30 in the NBA because he's got such a rare body type, 6'10", 200 pounds, very coordinated. And he doesn't look like he's grown into his body. So a lot of the appeal with him when you look at the NBA side is upside, and he's already scoring nearly 40 points in a basketball game at Assembly Hall in Indiana. Like there's legitimacy already, and then there's the upside. But what has people salivating is the upside. I say all that to say this. Ace Bailey's a riser for me, even though I entered the year having him number 2, and then my most recent board I published, I had him at 5. The reason he's a riser is because I don't think I was ever going to finish with him at 5. But Trey Johnson and Kasper Giacochonis, along with with Dylan Harper and Cooper Flag, who had 1 and 2, they had more substance and consistency to the way that they had played throughout the season, as well as some flashes. Ace Bailey in that game against Indiana provided me enough where I believe you can't pass on him through 5 picks. You just can't go that far without taking the talent. I've been an upside guy ever since we've done these podcasts. I've always talked about if you have the capacity to make those shots, then it makes you a better prospect than the guys that don't. My biggest take about that was I'll take Paolo Banchero 99.9% of the time over a Jabari Smith who can shoot and shot a better percentage, but he can't create space. Banchero's knock was he didn't shoot great shots. Well, he took them because he could make them. Ace Bailey's the extreme of that. I wish he would create a little more space. That'll come with getting stronger, a better handle, and I think you can develop that. But Ace Bailey, if every player in this draft hits their 100% outcome, I think he's the best player in the class. I just think it's more likely that Cooper Flag gets closer to 100 than Ace Bailey. I think Cooper Flag's 90 to 95 is probably better than Ace Bailey's 90 to 95. But if you're taking one guy, I'd take Tracy McGrady over Scottie Pippen. And those are like the Hall of Fame archetypes of Ace Bailey is Tracy McGrady, and Cooper Flagg's closer to Scottie Pippen, closer to like Kevin Garnett, someone like that. And I'll take the T-Mac archetype as my star. So I have to move him up after seeing him score so beautifully. But he just leaves a lot to be desired. And that's the beauty of evaluation, because the beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But man, it would scare me to death if I'm drafting 2 or 3 and Ace Bailey's on the board. And I'm like, man, if I don't pick him and he turns out to be this all-pro, I'm screwed. But if I pick him and he takes a while to develop, it doesn't look very good either. So he's got to be moved up, but he does terrify me.
He doesn't terrify me. I mean, we're talking about a guy that we've talked about it at length on this podcast. I mean, you can go anywhere and look at a scouting report. First thing they're going to talk about, upside, shot selection, and his flaws. We're still talking about a guy that is shooting 48.5% from the floor on a heavy, heavy diet of tough shots. Cooper Flagg is shooting 44% from the floor. You don't get the same knocks on shot selection. And this, I mean, obviously there's context that needs to be added. But if there's one guy that gets knocked for poor shot selection and a heavy degree of tough shots, then there's another guy who is shooting 4 percentage points lower than him that doesn't get the same knock. You just say, oh, well, Cooper can't shoot yet. Just the dialogue around Ace Bailey to me has been, I mean, some of it's been warranted because sometimes he takes some shots. You're like, dude, that was a tough shot. But I think that once he gets stronger, which Cooper already does have, which Dylan Harper already has a strength, I think that he's going to be even more efficient because sometimes, in my opinion, his tough shots are because he doesn't have the strength to turn the corner and get to the rim and finish through contact. So that's why when he drives to the rim and you cut him off, he has to do that like reverse pivot layup, which is a tough shot. While Dylan Harper in the same situation, he's going to put his shoulder into you. He's going to finish. Cooper Flagg, same thing. Even though Cooper's younger, he's just a lot more physical. But I think the chatter around Ace, like I said, some has been warranted, but Ace has been really good. I mean, you'll take 20 points a game on 48.5% shooting. The free throw percentage is concerning. It's concerning. I don't think it has anything to do with touch. I just think maybe it's a mental thing because you don't see a guy that can make the difficult shots that he makes just as a bad free throw shooter because he lacks touch. I just think maybe it's mental. All right, let's talk about Carter Bryant from Arizona, a freshman. I know that there were some scouts that really liked him coming into the season, mostly because of his defensive upside and potential. What were your thoughts on Carter Bryant, and why is he moving up in your opinion?
Well, this weekend he was perfect from the field, but strangely enough, in a game he didn't produce very well. I watched Arizona, and I thought, wow, like he moves so fluidly for someone as big as he is. And that was my initial appeal. I watched him in some all-star games in high school, and he knocked down some open threes. And I was like, oh, they're not playing that great of defense. Like, I belittled it, but I remember being intrigued and saw Arizona. Well, then they got Trey Townsend, KJ Lewis came back, and he was buried in a depth chart. Well, what's opened up space is Mo Krivas, the center for Arizona, is out for the year, which has caused them to play a little bit more of small ball, which puts him at the 4. And he's been a matchup nightmare at the 4. He hits threes, he runs the floor, and defensively he slides his feet well. I watched a possession of him guarding Cooper Flagg against Duke. And yeah, they're both freshmen and they're both highly touted, but you typically haven't seen many teams put freshmen on Flagg or even not just like a rugged physical defender. Think of KJ Adams, who did the best job on Flagg, an absolute unit of an athlete. And you then have his freshman guarding him, and he caused issues similarly on the 2 possessions where he kind of slid his feet, used his length to get in the way, and ran the floor. So I've been monitoring him from afar for a while, and then he went 5 for 5 from the field, knocks down threes, runs the floor. The appeal is simple to me. He is the prototypical 3-and-D. And if those of you who listen to all these, like, I appreciate you guys. I did say I think 3-and-D is becoming overrated because it's typically one side of the 3-and-D is good. One side. One's a good shooter, and then the guy's bad defender, but you say 3-and-D. Or the opposite. One's a good defender and a bad 3-point shooter, but like you leave him open. I think he's got the potential to be good at both. And it's kind of hiding in plain sight because he doesn't have the volume. but I think he's got the body type and potential to have a good shooting touch and have the good defensive traits. So he's a guy that I think is hiding in plain sight that I think will move up as he gets more playing time with Mo Krivas out.
Very small sample size, but he's shooting 33% from three and 53% from the foul line. Any concerns there?
I think it's confidence. Like the stroke looks good to me, but obviously if that continues, then you have to take it into account. But I don't love Arizona's offense either, so I do think the shot selection isn't like the typical line it up, shoot it. But yeah, I mean it's not great yet. This is just a gut feeling, a hunch, and the fact that he went 5 for 5 is why I include him as in the weekend risers.
Yeah, he's along with Darian Reed, two guys that I've spoken with NBA scouts about, who some feel that they are worthy of a first round pick, or at least inside the top 30 pick, regardless of their production this season. They just like their frame and the defensive upside, and they figure, we can work with everything else, because teams want that 6'8", 210, 220-pound wing that can play the 3 and 4 and that can defend, a versatile defender that can defend all over the floor. So, but I think a lot of it is going to come down long term how well he shoots the ball. But speaking of shooters, the guy that doesn't have any concerns shooting is Koby Brea. And we're going to talk about Koby Brea, and I don't want to say his lights out shooting performance, because he had a whole lights out shooting season last year where he shot like 50% from three. Leif is going to share his thoughts on Koby Brea. Also, Danny Wolf, who is quickly becoming a fan favorite. But before we get into the last segment, we got to talk about FanDuel, because from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, whether you win or you lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything, absolutely everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. And with FanDuel, you can bet on who's going to score the first touchdown, the first interception, so much more. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Koby Brea, lights out shooter, and maybe that's an understatement. I mean, he shot, 50% from three last year, heavy volume of attempts.
He's the best shooter in the country, and it's not even close.
At one point this year, he was shooting like 78% or something like that through the first, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 games of the year.
He's shooting 52% right now, and his volume is crazy. Like the most recent games, and that's after a bit of a slump. Like last game, he went 7 of 9, and that's actually not at all why I have him as a stock riser. But the game before that, he went 2 of 6, 2 of 7, 2 of 7, and then before that, like the percentage was even better. So Koby Brea at Dayton. Little fun fact. So I go to March Madness just about every year. I go to March Madness and I work for the Jazz. So one day I was working. I got there a little early and I scoped out some practice sessions. They're like 20-minute shoot-arounds. So I knew who he was, and I knew he was their second best player behind Deron Holmes. And I was watching Holmes because I wanted to see if his shot had gotten better, because that was a big concern of mine. It was looking better. And then all of a sudden, I just see this guy shooting from like 35 feet, and the ball's rotation just perfect. Top spin, backspin, splash, splash. So I count it, and this is not an exaggeration. 32 in a row from Brea, and only one hit the rim, and the practice ended. He didn't miss the entire practice. So then they're playing Nevada. This is Dayton versus Nevada first round. Nevada's up big, and I keep telling my friend I'm with, I was like, they need to give the ball to Brea because the dude can just shoot. All of a sudden, he hits 4 threes in the second half. They win the game. And I'm like, okay, he's going to be the best player, or one of the most sought-after players in the transfer portal, because there's no way in the world after that he's going to stay at Dayton. So he goes to Kentucky, and I was thinking, man, if I were Koby Brea, I would have gone to UConn, because UConn draws up incredible sets, and you just saw Cam Spencer shoot a million great shots. So he goes to Kentucky, And all of a sudden he's shooting 60% out the shoot. Like you said, he's up to 77, something like that percent. And then he goes to against Florida, and they have the biggest game of the year at Rupp. It's a big moment. And he's 7 of 9 from 3. So much so he's shooting like what I would consider heat check shots, head fakes, leaners, and they're going in. Like when he misses, it's a surprise. So is he a good defender? No, he's terrible. He's a horrible defender. So will he be labeled as a 3-and-D like I mentioned moments ago? Yes. He's only a 3. He just drains threes. He's terrible on defense, and you hope that you find a culture like the Heat that can teach you defense and adequacy, even if you're not a great athlete. But he also can handle the ball pretty well, and he makes good passes. But my goodness, is he the best shooter in the country? It's not even remotely close. He's the best shooter in the draft. It's not even remotely close. And I think you put him on a team, and he's a weapon. So Kentucky's best draft prospect, to me, is Koby Brea, even over Otega or Williams, who are more well-rounded basketball players. But I think he's just the most certain to have a role on an NBA team because he just does not miss threes.
Yeah, he's a specialist. Like, we haven't heard the term in a while. When I was growing up, you saw guys were labeled 3-point specialists. I think of like Steve Kerr. As the game evolved, it turned into can you shoot the 3, and can you defend? But he goes back to like the old school label of 3-point specialist. He does have good size at 6'7", 215. But I was curious to see how well he shot the ball, as basically just wondering, could he top what he did last year? Last year, 6 threes a game, 49.8% from 3. So what does he do this year? Same amount of attempts so far. 14 games in, but through 14 games on the same amount, 6.1 attempts per game, he has increased his 3-point percentage to 52%. Question for you: can he stay above 50 for the year?
Yeah, he definitely can. I don't know if that would be something I'd bet on, but I would not be shocked whatsoever because he's the best shooter in college basketball I think I've ever seen. Buddy Hield would be the only one I'd put near it, but Buddy Hield was doing it totally differently. Like that Oklahoma team was up to number 1 in the country, and they had a really good team, but Buddy Hield was putting it on the floor, and he was doing it. So he was a better player, but just pure shooting like Brea, I'm shocked when he misses. And at least Hield was taking such hard shots like it made sense to miss. So I legitimately think he's the best 3-point shooter that I've seen in college basketball, and I watch a ton of college basketball.
Yeah, no, nobody watches more college basketball than Leif Thulin. All right, let's talk about Danny Wolf. Danny Wolf has become a fan favorite, and I mentioned in a previous podcast, I have a friend that's pretty tied in with Michigan basketball. He went to a practice early, I don't know if it was like late summer or whatever, and he sends me a message and says Danny Wolf is a lottery pick. I thought, I like Danny Wolf. I think he's skilled. I think that's a little bit generous. I still think a lottery pick is a stretch, but man, can Danny Wolf play to the point where our mainstream NBA draft guys overthinking it by not putting him as a lock in the first round? I mean, Wolf is averaging 12.5 points, 10 rebounds, 3.8 assists. He's shooting 59% from the floor, 35% from 3. And he's a 7-foot, 250-pound point forward, point center, even though he's not playing the 5, he's playing the 4. But why is Danny Wolf a riser in your opinion?
Well, it's the versatility you referenced right there. Like, I remember when Michigan picked him up and then they picked up Trey Donaldson. And I was thinking to myself, like, I don't really love Donaldson as a point guard. He doesn't shoot it all that well. He's a good defender. So, like, how are they going to create offense, especially with 2 big guys kind of operating in the middle? Well, little did I know that Danny Wolf would be the point forward, point center. Like, think of Kelly Olynyk in the sense of you got a offensive hub, and that's become a more and more popular term because, of course, Jokic is the one who popularizes this. Like, if you can play out through a big, and Şengün's a player who resembles it, a Sabonis. I'm not comparing him to those guys, but that's super valuable because now defenses have to guard completely differently because you can operate with a passer that can score from different areas on the floor and create mismatches from their innate size. Wolf's a far better athlete than I gave him credit for at Yale. I think it looked different at Yale because it was so refined and like rooted in fundamentals. It was, here's a post up, you're bigger than this guy, here's a jump hook. Well, at Michigan, you're seeing him run pick and rolls with Vlad Golden, and he comes off the pick and roll and he'll fake and get to the rim and score a scoop, and then he'll throw a beautiful alley-oop to Golden, who's a crushing big. It's really, really pretty. And I think there's a world in which he's a lottery pick. I personally don't have him quite that high. I'd say closer to around 20 for me. But his production and the versatility in which he accumulates those numbers is something that's really impressive because he's become a better athlete. He's quicker than he was, and he's able to use his savvy. It's not like innate burst athleticism to create mismatches. He draws post ups. He punishes smaller guys on him when there's someone that's too big and can't match his speed and athleticism. He drives by them. I do think there's a world in which he becomes a luxury to have in the NBA as someone who creates offense for a unit he plays in as a mismatch drawing big guy.
I love guys that are matchup nightmares that just can create advantages by just as a mismatch. Wolf had a phenomenal game against USC. 21 points, 13 rebounds, 7 assists, 6 blocks, and 2 steals. So that was probably going to be one of the more phenomenal performances as far as just stuffing the stat sheet that we'll see. All right, let's wrap with Donnie Freeman. I had Donnie Freeman as a lottery pick coming into the season. I still am very, very intrigued by the flashes. I think the talent is definitely there. It was always a matter of, is he going to be able to put it all together? Or I shouldn't say is he, when will he put it all together? I think he will. I just wanted to see if he's going to put it together this season. Is he going to be someone that NBA teams take high just based off of the flashes? But so far this year, I think he's been good. 13 points, 7.9 rebounds. He's shooting 50% from the floor. The three-point shot is coming along. He wasn't making them when the season started, but he's creeping up to respectable numbers at 33% from three, shooting 79% from the foul line. Why is Donnie Freeman a stock riser in your opinion?
Well, I think part of it's just the shooting coming back to what we expected. You and I talked about him, I don't know how long ago, but we talked about him kind of as an afterthought in a hey, like, what do you think of this guy? And when I thought of him initially, I kind of thought he reminded me of Kwame Evans, the way I evaluated him coming into his freshman year. Incomplete, but like there's a ton of talent, and if they fill in the gaps, then it's really good. The issue for Donnie Freeman is Syracuse is a train wreck right now. And he's getting a lot of chances to score, but they're not well created like you'd have anticipated considering what the personnel was. You'd expect Starling to get to the rim and, they'd be able to draw something up. They'd be able, now that they're out of the zone that you saw for 46 years with Boeheim, you now would see the athleticism, get him out in transition. So a lot of the stuff that you kind of expected hasn't happened, and yet his production is kind of where I anticipated it would be. And that is interesting to me. I'm still not over the top on him, but he's kind of in the same mold as Carter Bryant. Like, I like some of the traits that are there that are unteachable, and then some of the teachable traits are getting better throughout the season despite a not ideal situation. So those two are more kind of the gut check, like this is what I believe will happen, and here are the signs that they're getting better. His last couple of games, he's been relatively efficient. A couple obviously were dunks, but he hit a few threes. He's active, at least defensively. I hesitate to say a good defender, but he's active defensively, and he has traits that would lead him to being solid defensively. And I think this is just one I'm relying on my gut that he will become good. And I'm saying it a little bit early before like the weekend. Like Ian Jackson had a great weekend. Ace Bailey had a great weekend. I think these are signs of good things to come for these guys.
Yeah, I'm all in on them. The defensive numbers, and you would like them to be better, especially the counting stats. He's averaging combined 0.8 stocks per game, so you would like that to be better. But I'm buying into the flashes. I like the rebounding. I like the physical tools. He's a first-round pick, in my opinion. I'm going all in on the upside.
I love upside. You know me.
Yeah, you got to swing for the fences sometimes. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast. Stay tuned. In the next episode, Leif and I, we're going to share our thoughts on some guys whose stock is falling based off of their play this weekend, but over a little bit of time. Also, before we go, remember to check out the Locked On newsletter at lockedondaily.com. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe and Leif Thulin, and we are out of here.